Shakespeare. Why do we study it? William Shakespeare, born in the mid-1500s, is considered one of the greatest English writers and one of the greatest English dramatists to ever live. But some would question, why do we need to study the works of a man who wrote almost 500 years ago? It doesn't apply to me anymore, and it's hard to understand. Why do we bother to study the works of William Shakespeare? What good could it possibly do me? These are common questions among students in a high school classroom. There has to be a reason. There are many reasons to continue to study Shakespeare. Here are 4 reasons that Shakespeare continues to be important to study in the high school classroom. Number 1, contributions to our modern English language. While the language does take some getting used to, it is important to realize how much of our modern language comes from Shakespeare. He's considered one of the greatest writers to write in the English language, and you may not realize it, but you quote him all of the time. Hundreds of our phrases that we use daily were invented, or at least initially recorded, by Shakespeare. Phrases like, break the ice, the be-all and the end-all, dead as a doornail, the devil incarnate, faint-hearted, knock knock who's there, for goodness sakes, and dozens of others can all be directly traced back to the works of William Shakespeare. And there are other interesting things as well that have come from Shakespeare. Did you know that he invented names like Jessica, Olivia, and Miranda? Number 2, meter and rhyming in poetry. Poetry is an incredibly important part of studying the works of Shakespeare. Studying poetry is a required part of English education because some of the world's greatest poetry is written in the English language, and Shakespeare penned a great deal of that poetry. Much of his work was written in a form called iambic pentameter, which takes great skill, is complicated, beautiful, and very specific with its meter. Through your English career in high school and beyond, you will become familiar with some of his sonnets. They are often used to teach important aspects of meter and rhyming within poetry. One of his most famous sonnets is sonnet number 18. Number 3, important literary devices. Within Shakespeare's plays are all of the important literary and plot devices that you will be required to learn and to know throughout your high school career. When learning about literary devices like alliteration, hyperbole, or personification, Shakespeare is a gold mine of resources to learn why these are important and how they should be used properly in literature. When learning about deeper meaning found in texts, Shakespeare is a go-to because of the availability of interesting characters, intriguing plot, and deeper lessons to be learned. Romance and commitment in Romeo and Juliet, trust and suspicion in Othello, betrayal and family connection in Hamlet, or comedic identity crisis in As You Like It. Shakespeare's plays provide room to analyze and interpret in many different ways. Number 4, continued cultural relevance. This point goes back to the lessons that we can learn from Shakespeare's plays. Perhaps one of the most important reasons that we can continue to study Shakespeare in the 21st century classroom is that his works are still culturally relevant. Characters like Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet and Ophelia, or Macbeth are referenced constantly all over our pop culture. There are references in TV shows, movies, music videos, and even other literature. A variety of musical artists like Eminem, Tupac, the Beatles, and Taylor Swift have all included references to Shakespeare in their lyrics. And Hollywood is constantly referencing Shakespeare plays and even remaking them entirely. Did you know that the Disney's famed The Lion King is an adaptation of Shakespeare's Hamlet? Romeo and Juliet has multiple modern adaptations with children's movies like Romeo and Juliet, teenage romances like Warm Bodies, and even a musical in West Side Story. The movie She's the Man is just a retelling of As You Like It, and 10 Things I Hate About You is the taming of the shrew. The references are everywhere. When students study Shakespeare, they gain knowledge in the classroom and culture outside of the classroom. Even though these were written nearly 500 years ago, Shakespeare continues to be incredibly important and relevant in our culture.